Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Kung Fu. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So after in the aftermath of the last episode, we're picking up with Nikki getting the Mei Li's sisters letters, and obviously I was under a wrong impression. Like, I know that her mom had told like this lie of like, right, my sister died when she was 12 years old from tuberculosis. I was under the impression she was still saying that her sister did die, she just lied about the circumstances. So I was under the impression her sister was still dead, but it's like, no, I'm probably misinterpreted that when they brought that up before, or maybe this is them giving clarity on that. I don't know. I could be wrong again, but whatever the case may be, she doesn't know whatever happened to her sister. It's like she hasn't heard from her in so long, and for her, it's like not knowing hurts less, you know? Because sometimes the truth isn't what you want it to be, so it's like, probably because she's like, I don't even know if my sister's alive, but for Nikki, it's like, I have to find her, because she's the only one that can understand what I'm going through. She has more answers about all of these weapons, so we need to, find her. So they're trying to track her down, and Henry's like, well, where do we even start? Because the last letter's from like 20-ish years ago or something like that. So it's from a long time ago. So it's like, how do we even begin to like look for her? But they end up like with a red panda, and like her like specific like that like specific like jacket she wore. Because Henry had went through like some more, as he says, like conspiracy adjacent stuff, and ended up stumbling upon someone like her named Sandra Yang. So she's going through a new alias. So working with Evan, they were able to kind of track down like potentially like where she was, the last place she was, and they decided to take a road trip. Henry was like, no, I'm gonna go with you, like that way we can alternate between driving, and that way we can get there faster. And Evan's like, no, I'm gonna go, I have a lot of free time. And we kind of find out the reason why is him and Sabine have broken up. She had texted him like, oh yeah, I'm going to leave I got the last of my stuff, the keys under the mat type of thing, and he's not telling anyone that. And it's that awkward thing of like, yeah, Evan's putting up stuff, and she's like, Henry's like, no, you can take the front, and she's like, don't you need he's like, you need a leg room, and she's like, are you sure? And he's like, I'm sure. This is good, because it's like, right, this is awkward. Your ex and the new guy, as well as the new guy in your life, which even that's complicated. It's like all rounds of complicated. It's like, well, here we go. But on the drive there, I think this was a nice episode too, of just kind of like, it's not like Henry and Evan have ever had beef necessarily, but it's just kind of like, right, there's been this quiet like, yeah, we both know what's up when it comes, like, we both like Nikki, and we're both aware of the other person having feelings for Nikki, but it's complicated. But it's like, right, Evan turning on some music because it's like, oh, isn't it going to wake Nikki? But like, Evan's like, no, I've taken plenty of trips with her, like nothing wakes her up. And then like Henry's kind of vibing to it, just like, I saw that. He's like, no, you saw nothing. And they're kind of laughing, and Nikki's smiling because it's like, right, people in her life, like, coming together, like them not, it's like them kind of bonding a little bit. But something I thought was kind of interesting is obviously they went to the place. They're like, okay, this is the last place my aunt was seen, and it was like, right, this place got shut down, and so they went to a nearby place, and the lady who runs it pointed them in the direction of a dude, his Duke's son, which we never found out what the issue was there. Like, it was just kind of like, and I guess, I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. Like, we never really found out, like, why he had such beef with his dad. And also, like, his boys were like, yo, he told you, no, let it go. I guess it's like, I guess that should be respected, because it's like, oh, these are his boys. It's like, yo, that's a subject he don't want to talk about, and why can't you let it go? But also, like, they went too far, getting handsy and pushy. It's like, yo. And then that turns into a little bit of a brawl and everything. Hank, I think was the dude's name, because the lady who runs the place had, wasn't her name Dawn? I could be mistaken. I'm probably misremembering all of that, but she was just kind of like, don't tear up my place. But they ultimately get Duke's address after Nikki threatened to destroy like his pole, what he's playing pool with, his stick, and it's because it's a really, really good one. And it's like, all right, so they go to where Duke is, and Duke's not the biggest fan of just people. And I think it's interesting because obviously the title of this episode is Isolation, and there's a lot of that in this episode. because we see he's isolated, and maybe that's why Hank kind of like has issues with his dad, because of that, right? He kind of potentially abandoned his family to just, for whatever reason, out there, or just kind of secluded himself from his family in some shape or form, and that kind of led to some resentment. And I guess that's where Mei Li's sister, as well, going under the name of Sandra Yang, ended up, I guess that's, their paths ended up crossing because she would drop by occasionally, because she, I forgot what he said the circumstances were, but basically he was tumbling down the hill, he hit his head and like messed up his leg. She basically made a splint for him and like dragged him back home, and on occasion she would stop by, you know, and he would, like, he tried to find where she lived, but when he got close one time, she kind of sent, I guess, he never really went into details, but I guess she kind of sent him away, and kind of respecting her, like, right, like, I guess, like, because he got so close, like, she was like, no, go away, don't ever come back, because she isolated herself because of what she knew, that she knew there were people after her. I mean, I guess it's like any number of people, but because so far we've been focusing on Jilan, and obviously we know it's not just Jilan looking for the weapons. We have Kerwin's dad, who's been looking for the weapons for like 30 plus years, so that comes as no surprise. But I mean, who's to say because that might be who she was hiding from, because like you had to be somewhere super far off the grid and hidden away, so it had to be someone powerful. But these are just two people, two groups that we're aware of. I mean, there's no telling how many other people out there in the world are looking for the 8 weapons. He actually he's kind of paranoid too, because he's looking, it's like, oh, she said that someone would come looking for her, so he's like, I need to know, you know, how do I know for sure that you know her? So she ended up calling up her mom, and her mom described her as like, my sister would, like, even when she was mad, she had such kind eyes, she cared so much for people, and animals, and even tells the story of like, right, when a boy pushed me out in the street, my sister jumped in front of me, hands out, and stopped the car. She was willing to sacrifice her life for me, you know? And all of this is hitting Mei Li, because especially it's a complicated time too. Jin is back home, but he's like, right, I've kept secrets, but you kept many for years, and so I just need time to process it. She's like, okay, you know, and she wanted to give him his space, but in that moment, talking about her sister, it brought it all back, because, you know, there's part of her that's, I think, scared of whatever it is that Nikki might find. It's like, you know, because she probably hasn't been able to talk about her sister like that in so long, to just freely be able to talk about her, like, right, you know, it's like, she was, because everything she's already had to talk about her sister was a lie. She had to be like, oh yeah, like, no one ever got, like, her sister was always just kind of her secret, like, right, because she perpetuated the lie of, like, right, she died from tuberculosis at 12, and it's like, so to kind of keep that up, it's just like, but now that it's out, but now you're kind of feeling all of that, because it's like, right, Nikki's stumbling closer to the truth. At some point, I'm going to end up finding out what happened to my sister. You know, it's just like, I miss her, because, like, you know, her sister meant so much to her, kind of like, you know, not just on a familial level like that. There was like, you know, it's just like, it seems like her sister was straight up her best friend too, you know? And it's more so because it's like, right, like, reading those letters, she was like, maybe that will make you understand, Nikki, why I was so not wanting you to go down the same path as my sister, you know? But Duke ended up giving her directions and says, like, you probably have to go alone, because if you don't, you might spook her. So she kind of leaves Evan and Henry behind, which they're like, oh, of course she did that. Because even Duke's like, yeah, she said that if she tried to talk to you guys about it, you would have been like, no. But it's like, Henry wants to follow, but Evan's like, no, like, she's better at, like, this wilderness type of stuff. Like, anytime we went camping, and it's like, she's got more experience than even you. It's like, right, and if, you know, it was a situation where it's like, we might as well just wait. The fact is, we just got to trust in Nikki. And it's like, if a day passes and, you know, she's not back, then we'll kind of call in other people for help. But for now, it's like, Nikki feels like she has to do this. So, and even them bonding, like, that night over, like, right, it's kind of nerve-wracking, because it's like, right, they're worried for Nikki, but it's like, yeah, that's the problem with Nikki, is like, we always find ourselves in this particular situation. Like, she always tries to do the right thing, and because of that, she always does it alone, and like, we're kind of always left here holding, like, oh yeah, right, oh, you don't have to go it alone, which we'll talk about that later. But obviously the conversation comes up about, oh yeah, me and Sabine broke up. It's like, oh, he's like, I'm sorry about that. It's like, Henry's like, did you tell Nikki? He's like, no, with everything she's got going on, I didn't want to just add that on. But, you know, it's like, he's like, I know you and Nikki. He's like, yeah, we don't have to talk about it. He's like, right, because they both agree, like, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where our positions are on how we feel about it. At the end of the day, Nikki's the one that's gonna have to choose. So I think that's a very like mature conversation to have. I think as dudes, as a conversation, I don't think a lot of dudes would be able to have straight up like. I mean, I don't know. As you know, I don't think so. They'd be like straight up like, yeah, like at the end of the day, it's going to be Nikki's choice. That can't. That's a complicated situation to be in, but they do, like I said, understand. Like I think they're building their own bond, but also realizing that, right, it's Nikki's choice. Like no matter how, yeah, we both aware of how the other feel. It's not. We can't be all like oh, like she's my. It's like no, this it's not like a possession thing. It's like not. She'll choose who she wants to because it's her choice at the end of the day. She has to be the one to choose. But out in the woods, things didn't kind of go according to plan as like Nikki was trying to get away from a wolf and kind of ended up spraining her ankle. And the wolf walks away with her entire pack, so that sucked. Makes a makeshift splint and uses a stick to kind of help herself. Which I think is so interesting. I think it speaks volumes. It's like, oh, your ankle sprained or whatever, and you were still like running on it. Like that's pretty impressive. But then like the wolf got caught in a trap, and I think this is a moment of kind of reflecting, kind of a little bit like her aunt. This is where I actually thought her aunt would show up or something, storytelling wise, like because I thought like, oh, her aunt's going to be here to set the like see that she set the animal free, and it's like, oh, I can trust you. Like this animal was threatening you, but when the time came, rather than you being like, oh my, you get what you deserve, it's like, no, you set it free and it went on its way. So a little bit of that, like you can kind of showcasing like, right, that, because even her mom had been like, yeah, your aunt was a lot like you. And ultimately Nikki does find like the cabin she was staying in, but she's gone. She's not there, so you're like, oh, maybe she'll come back. But sadly, listening to the tapes, you find out she's not coming. She's gone. She's like, basically, I spent so much time, in isolation, and I had to keep these secrets. And I'm going, this is where my journey ends. The moment she said, I was like, she died. And she's like, but this is where yours begins. And so she finds her aunt's grave outside, but then it begs the question, who buried her? So, like, did she pass on what she knows to someone else? I'm curious, and it's kind of sad. Like she died, like maybe she wasn't necessarily alone. Maybe there was someone else that was there that like who we don't know who she was with near the end. Maybe it's someone else that she kind of sent on this path. Like for all we know, she might have had a child of her own. So like, we don't know about that. So because Duke was saying like the last time he saw her was like 4 years and a month ago. So it's like who knows when in that time she died. Like the fact that he didn't see her in that time must have meant like she died that long ago. But he wanted to respect her privacy because he didn't know, he couldn't find his way to her place. When he thought he was getting close, that's when she kind of shoot him away. But it's like he never ever found out. So, and that's sad too because like all she has to go on is her mom's, stories of her sister, but it's like she never got to meet or know her aunt on some level. But she brings the cassettes back and everything, and obviously she finds Evan and Henry sleeping together. It's like, oh, and Henry's like, it's not what it looks like. She's like, sure, it's not. But it's like, did you find what you were looking for? It's like, yeah, like, I'm okay. I did get what I needed, like, even though she's gone. So, once again, that's going to be an interesting mystery to find out who it was exactly that buried her. I thought it would be interesting. I mean, I like to think it happened off screen, but I'm curious if Nikki ended up telling Duke about what happened to her aunt, like, because he's going this entire time never knowing. But I think it's actually a beautiful message in this episode. And like to me, because a path of a warrior, it's most things always depicted as such a like lonely road that you kind of have to go alone. And I thought it was so interesting because like obviously AJ was coming from a perspective of like, I went this alone, but you don't have to, like, don't isolate yourself. There are people around you that love you. And to me, that like there's plenty of like media, like video games and stuff, usually more in the anime route of just kind of like whether it be like a Kingdom Hearts or a Trails of Cold Steel video game wise, but even anime, that being that thing of like friendship is power type of thing. Love is power. I mean, that applies all across the board. I mean, even it touches into superhero territory and stuff like that anyway, but it's just that thing of like, right, don't go alone. There are people that love you, that are by your side through it all. Surround yourself in that love and embrace it, and don't kind of isolate yourself, because she's like, I did, because Nikki isn't alone. She has her entire family behind her. They will support her and help her along this way. They already have in multiple ways going forward. But also she's got Henry, she's got Evan. There are people who you are there for. Because I think this will be a pivotal, God. What I'm trying to say? I'm stumbling on a word. Pivotal moment is what I'm trying to say. For her, of not rushing into things alone, realizing that, right, like I've leaned on people before, lean on them all the way. They've got me, I've got them, type of thing, you know? And we see that kind of resonate in many different levels of just like throughout, you know, because when Mei Li was kind of dealing with all of this, like Jen came over, you know, embraced her and held her, like despite the issues, he was there for her in this time, obviously, you know, and, you know, there was also in this episode you had Athena kind of running like a class, and there's a pretty smart student there named Courtney, and Courtney's wondering about like, oh, maybe I should work for a company, and he's like, oh yeah, Chase, and she was like, no, don't work for. She was like kind of like, oh no, Chase kind of like a micromanager. You need someone that you go work at a company where it's like you can be free and kind of allowed to be yourself. Like obviously Athena was kind of trying to work around it, but sadly Courtney ends up taking the job anyway just because the benefits. And so ultimately she's like, right, I need to warn Courtney about it. I'm gonna have to break my NDA. I think for Athena it's like no matter what the consequences are, like I don't want this to kind of repeat again, you know. Because I think she always feels a little like, because it's like I didn't speak up for myself as well as the other women, I didn't speak up for them either, but it's like, right, to prevent something like this I'm going to speak up, you know, because she even ends up telling Ryan about it, because now he knows as well, like, so they're the only ones that still know. So, but before she helps out with the Courtney thing by opening up about her NDA, like she's going to talk to Dennis, and we see at the end of the episode she does talk to Dennis. And at the same time, because like Ryan was kind of like, you know, oh, like doing his thing, because like, right, Joe's away at the time, and then it's like, oh, his work hours were kind of still cut back and stuff. But then like at the end, like Joe's texting him being like, yeah, I can't wait to get back, you know, talk to you and see you and everything. So the love that's kind of circling around all these people, you know, I think it's beautiful. Like once again, showcasing like no one's in this alone. There's plenty of people that are by your side through it all, which is even interesting because we even showcased that with Jilan as well, because of her and Kerwin, because that was kind of something born out of like, right, necessity. We're just using each other, but it does seem like potentially there's something growing from this, and because of that, maybe Jilan will change, or this might be the dagger in her back she doesn't see coming. Because that's the thing of like, she's worried about betrayal, and I think it's for her, it's like she's always been betrayed by the people closest to her, whether it be her uncle or her sister, in the sense that like, oh, my uncle was in contact with my sister the entire time and I never knew, you know. So but because basically we also learn about like, because she's like, oh yeah, I've got these scars like from like countless surgeries and stuff, and she's like, yeah, like when she was younger she had to wear braces, you know, for her legs and stuff. I was like, from what we saw of her in that flashback, like what, in episode 7 I want to say, we didn't see that, so that must have been something that, but we know like as a little girl she was sick, so it must have been like some like really aggressive stuff that she had to get surgeries and stuff like that. And for her it's like she went through so much pain, and for her it's like there is no beginning and end, it's just constant pain, and I think she's just learned to like fight it and deal with it. Like she's dealt with it her entire life. It's more so just a thing, it's just a constant, it's just a part of my life that I just adjust it to. So I think it's a thing of like, you know, for her it's like, because Kerwin was like, oh, is that where all that anger come from? She's like, no, that's something else. But I think it lends itself to her determination. I think it's kind of like it fits along with kind of her bits of isolation as well, you know. But obviously, like her and Kerwin kind of bond, because like Kerwin's got marks on his arm, and she's like, where'd that come from? He's like, oh, it was a car accident. But it turns out it was actually from his dad, because he talks about like, my dad, you know, actually sat me, my brother, and my sister down, and he basically graded us. And I was 3. I mean, I was A3, not he was 3, but A3, meaning like he was the least useful. And so basically, he wanted Kerwin to be like a carbon copy of him. So that's why when like Jilon is like, no, ask your father for help. He's like, no, never asking that man for help, because that's what this mission is about for him. It's like, I can get like, I want to find something that he spent so much of his life trying to acquire these weapons. I want to rub it in his face that I was able to find something he couldn't, you know. But that need to prove himself for his father might end up superseding whatever's happened between him and Jilon, and that's why, like, she might, it could either go either way, where it is serious and Kerwin never betrays her, but because Jilon's under the belief that everyone that she gets close to will ultimately end up betraying her, she'll probably end up isolating herself. You know, you could definitely see this going sideways. Or, like I said, maybe Kerwin does end up betraying her and she doesn't see it, and it makes her, like, fall even deeper of, like, right, I can't trust people. I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see, because she ends up revealing to him, like, right, I have 3 of the weapons. We also find out that Kerwin's dad has 3. It took him 30 years to find 3 weapons, when Jilon was able to do that in months, you know, so... but it's like, why does she want beyond, and it's like, the reason why she wants it so much, it's like, with that power, you can forge your future into whatever you want, and she's like, I will never be betrayed again, you know? It's essentially, it's like, right, I was hurt and I'll be so powerful, no one will be able to hurt me. I'll be able to shape my world. I'll be able to shape the world, my future, into whatever I want it to be. But obviously that's a conversation from Mei Li's sister too, about, right, these weapons can easily corrupt someone in the wrong hands. And considering Jilon, like, she's not the right person to wield these weapons, like, you know, it's just going to be more of an issue if she does. So... we do see at the end they were able to track down the axe, because it is a place, the axe ended up being in a place that Kerwin's dad was looking, but they had more of an idea of where to look first, so he's still in the dark, so they ended up snatching it right from underneath them. So Kerwin's dad has 3, they have 4, and it's like, because Kerwin's like, right, we'll steal the 3 when the time is necessary. So that means currently there is only 1 weapon at play here. I guess I guess I almost kind of expected maybe they wouldn't gather all the weapons in the first season, because, I mean, it happens pretty quickly, but I guess I just didn't think about it. I was like, it also makes sense that being a potential season finale of just, like, everything gathered and what that looks like. Once again, it just makes me think a little bit of, like, the Jackie Chan adventures, because usually by the end of those, like, all, like, you know, whether it be the talismans or the animals, when all of the talismans ended up, like, getting put into the bodies of the respective animals that they were in, or the Oni in, like, what I believe is, like, the final season of the show. Like, it's something of that nature. Like, I believe, like, everything's done over the course of 1 season of just, like, that adventure and everything. I could be mistaken. There might be bleed over between episodes, but I think it's an entire season. I mean, that's, I think, usually the structure of seasons, but I don't know. Because I think I almost treated it like the keys from Grimm. If you've ever seen the show Grimm, if you haven't, there's, like, these special keys. That ended up being a big plot point in the show. It pop in from time to time. It was an overarching story. It's literally not till, like, maybe I can't remember. It's blurring together. It's either the final season or the second to last season where all of that comes together. So it's like, I guess I thought the weapons might be in that same regard, but it's like, nah, they're all gathered. Like I said, there's only 1 at play left now, so it's up for grabs. So if Kerwin's dad ends up getting it first, there's going to be, you know, a major split between, like, all right, like, they've got half, he's got half, but they plan on stealing it from him whenever they get a chance. So we'll see how ultimately all of this, all the reveals and developments play out going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.